What's up, everybody? Welcome in to Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greeson here on Southeastern 16. Before we get started, let's talk about Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's all caps BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right. We start with Mr. Jay Greeson up in Chattanooga. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. Just trying to stay cool. The heat has hit us in earnest. So bouncing between softball tournaments and getting ready for school. So it's you blink your eyes and the summer's gone.
The youngsters these days start school really early compared
Yeah,
to
it's like the first week of August, and which is nuts.
Nuts. We started the last week of August.
And then got the long week for Labor Day.
Right.
Or the short week, long weekend. And now, I mean, they're covered up, and they are less than pleased about the idea of going back to school.
Yes.
Who can blame them? I mean, I know a lot of kids and good kids like school and like being around their buddies, but nobody truly loves school. No. I mean, and if you did, that's a you thing. So I'm not trying to offend any of our viewers, but I mean, if you were super jazzed about school starting back, I feel bad about what your home life was, my friend.
Exactly. All right. SEC Media Days had Napier yesterday.
What'd you think of Napier?
Look, man, I think he's good people. He's a hard worker. I thought I guess he answered the questions well, but I mean, I'm just still frustrated about everything that's gone on the last 2 years. You give me your opinion on it, or just in general yesterday or whatever.
Well, I thought he did better than most at the podium, but I also thought he really did well in the spotlight he had, because yesterday was not about Billy Napier. If Billy Napier had been on, say, Monday, where a whole lot of the questions and the storylines and the columns that were going to be written about, hey, Billy, do you expect to be still coaching the Gators come Columbus Day? What about Thanksgiving? What is it going to take to keep your job? But yesterday was Sarkisian in Dallas and Kalen DeBoer filling in the shadow of Nick Saban. So this was a perfect opportunity for him to he is good people. He grew up 40 miles from our newspaper. So we've had a relationship with him for a long time. But I think he is forever going to be a really good coach at a program like Louisiana Lafayette. I think he honestly needs to look at the Will Muschamp model and it's okay if you don't have the skill set to be the lead dog. You can still be a really good football coach and a really good dude, but you just may not be the number one. And in that regard, it's a whole different kettle of fish. I mean, you got to be the one at Florida. Then Florida's softball program's great. Their basketball program's improving. The baseball program's great. But it doesn't matter. You're still the one because you're the guy that leads them out into the swamp. And if you're losing games when Tom Petty comes on the speakers to start the fourth quarter, I'm sorry. I don't care how many good questions you answer at SEC Media Day. We're going to have to pack your bags.
Yeah, and I didn't like one of the answers he had to the question. I think it was phrased, are you on track? And he said, like, yeah, would he have liked to finish off some games better? Yes, but we are on track. And I'm just like, no, no, you're not. We're not on track. And you did not inherit a horrible situation by
No.
any means. You inherited an underachieving team that was 2 years removed from, if we don't have three defensive penalties on third down stops against Alabama, we beat one of the best teams in the last 30 years in Atlanta. You were 2 years removed from that, or two seasons.
And you talk about his 2-year tenure. Year one is a guy with Anthony Richardson is a dude now. And all right, I know this is SEC 16. We're the platform. We're going to talk college. If anybody wants to hit me up on Twitter about fantasy football advice, I am here. Anthony Richardson, healthy, going to be a point machine. I don't think he'll ever win a Super Bowl, but by God, he's going to score a ton of fantasy football points.
Yes, indeed. He is an absolute monster. And I don't think he's going to continue to get hurt the way he did last year. I think he's going to be hurting some people. All right. So anyway, but just closing off on Napier, I mean, he has had, right when he got there, I think within like 3 or 4 months, the football only, which is like almost, I think it was $88 million or something. He had that to use as a recruiting tool. Okay. He also had, this new era of the transfer portal where it's so easier and faster to flip your roster. I mean, LSU was off the similar season as Florida, and Brian Kelly won the SEC West the next year. He didn't turn over the roster enough. He didn't go in the portal nearly enough. I know he just had this mindset of like, oh, I got a long contract. This is a 5-year plan. My culture, my this, my that. Like, dude, win ball games, man. And we ran Mullen off because of his recruiting. And year one and year two of Mullen's recruiting was better than Napier's year one and year two. And it was going to be the same for year three until we got those 3 post-spring transfers in Cormani, the Zandella or whatever he initially went to USC for spring practice, but he transferred to us, and and the Elijah Badger, the transfer from ASU. So anyway, enough of the Gators. What else on media day caught your eye? Oh, and Lane Kiffin. We'll talk about.
Well, I think it is Lane Kiffin stole his day with quite possibly the most human reaction that we've ever seen from Lane Kiffin. That was not jovial, social media pictures of his dog, rumors about his extracurricular activities, whether he's looking for this job or that. He was noticeably moved about the questions about his father, Monty Kiffin, who died earlier this month at 84, the renowned defensive coordinator who invented the Tampa 2, which, while he was with the Buccaneers, which are, of course, 2 safeties split in the field and the middle linebacker dropping deep in the middle. And in truth, looking this up, not only was I moved by Kiffin, I lost my father, it'll be 6 years ago next month. And for guys who have great connections with their dad, it never leaves you. It never leaves you. And for that, I appreciated the human element from Lane. But then looking it up, I was stunned to learn that Monty Kiffin is not in the NFL Hall of Fame. And I'm trying to come up with somebody who has been as strategically difference-making in the last 2 decades, especially defensively, as Monty Kiffin has. I mean, you can talk about what Parcells did with moving somebody as fast as Lawrence Taylor to a pass rusher, and that has now changed the sport and changed the trajectory of what everybody looks for in those defensive ends, outside linebackers, those guys. So I get that, but that was easy to forget. That was the early 80s, late 70s. I mean, Monty Kiffin in the Tampa 2, if you went to your high school, Brian, on Friday night and watched them, there's a real chance the high school team is playing the Tampa 2. This is now, I mean, this is like the guy who invented shotgun not being in the NFL Hall of Fame. And maybe he's not. I don't know. I don't know who invented the shotgun. I think it's Tom Landry, actually. And I know he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Monty Kiffin should be in the Hall of Fame. No doubt. And that was definitely the most human side we've ever seen of Kiffin. And he was very appreciative, touched on how Saban came directly to see him and, right when he got there.
And the other two things, one was Saban, and I was a little disappointed that he was clear in his comments in SEC media days this week that he's not going to ask tough questions. I mean, his verbiage was he's going to ask questions as a former coach of things he knows coaches want to talk about players the coaches want to speak about, and issues with their team. And in that regard, then Saban probably needs to be either an in-booth analyst or stay on the College Game Day set. Because if he's just going to be an extension of the mouthpiece of coach speak that we've heard, and I mean, it at that point it's meaningless. The other thing is Kirby Smart took to the podium, and I think this was Tuesday. He took to the podium and said Georgia is not going, he nor his team are going to use the 2023 SEC championship game loss as motivation. And I know you and I try to be clean. I'm going to look directly in the camera and say bullshit, because no, I mean, it was when they went back to back, every Georgia player looked directly in the camera and said,
shocked to work.
Nobody believed in us. Nobody believed in us. They were preseason number 2 in the country coming off a natty. Everybody believed in you, bro. Come on. And now you're not going to use losing an SEC title game in that fashion and dropping from 1 to 5 and not getting a chance to three-peat. You're not going to use that for motivation? I'm going to tell you, I've got some oceanfront property here in Chattanooga that I'm willing to sell just about anybody who wants to text me or hit me up on Twitter.
Yes, and they were favored by 13 over TCU in the title game and by 6 over a very, very good Ohio State team. Okay, on to the SEC QB rankings, or any last remarks on Media Day? Who we got today?
Well, Media Day is they're still commencing down there. A lot of teams going today, including Hugh Freeze and my Auburn Tigers, unless, of course, he's got to get on the cell phone and call some his friends in the relative Florida areas near and around where you live. But and the predictions will come out. They'll probably be published on Friday if they follow standard procedure. We'll review some of those next week. But I will say this final thing. I know why they did it, because Texas and Oklahoma are coming. This thing should always be in Hoover. Period. End of conversation. Mm-hmm. It is the heartbeat of where the SEC is. Don't go to Dallas. Don't go any further north. I mean, if you want to do it every 4th year in Atlanta.
I think they're doing Atlanta next year. Am I right on that?
They are, but don't bounce this thing around. This thing became this thing in Hoover. And there, for the first time in maybe 30 years, I don't think the Chattanooga Times Free Press has had somebody in Dallas, because now it's cost prohibitive. So,
yeah. Yep. All right. Before we get into Arkansas, it is Arkansas Day. We are recording Thursday on almost 1 Eastern. And we're going to do we did coaching rankings last week, and we're going to do SEC QB rankings this week. And I'll give my top 5, and Jay's going to kind of do like he did last week, more of the tier thing. So I'm going to go with Carson Beck at 1. I really don't think there's really any separation or much at all from which it's kind of like your tier thing. But I'll go Milrow 2, Jackson Dart 3, and Quinn Ewers 4. And I'm going to go with Nico 5. And that's obviously, he hadn't played a ton. That's kind of me just predicting based on just how well he played in the bowl game, and just everything you hear and read about him seems to be spectacular.
But yeah, oh, absolutely. And no, the kid's a phenomenal athlete. The side question here, and we probably should have, is this something we're looking at from a Mel Kiper perspective, or something we're looking at as who's going to have the best numbers, or something we're looking at as, if I'm a fan of Team X and I could trade for any other quarterback in the SEC, who am I going to get? Because if I'm doing that, Jalen Milrow is 1 for me. And I know Kiper and a lot of those guys are going to have the tall, throw it, big arm projections of not only Carson Beck, not only Quinn Ewers, and Jackson Dart. All those guys are going to light up the combine when they put a football in their hand in the underwear Olympics. If I need a guy to win a football game, if I need a guy to handle the modern college game, Jalen Milrow is my best quarterback in the SEC.
I think we should do it like, if I've got $500 on a Saturday night, who do I want playing quarterback that night?
Well, because the teams are different, who do you want with a drive to cover your number? If you are against some of these upper tier quarterbacks, because I agree with you, I think Nico, those 4 guys in my mind are tier 1. Those guys are elite. And that is Milrow, Ewers, Dart, Beck.
Yes.
Those guys are great. Then Nico Imaliava, and now, because Brian can't say it, he is now known as Nico for the rest of the pod. So I think he's atop the next group. And that next group is good. I mean, that next group is guys I would trust. And I certainly would trade my quarterback at Auburn, Peyton Thorne, for a whole lot of guys across this league, especially those guys in tier 2. But if we're talking about one drive, tie game, you got $500 on the money line. Tie game. Who you want taking snaps to lead your team down the field? And I'm not saying which team do you want to go down the field, because Carson Beck's got to drive a Ferrari for the last year. I'm not saying Alabama's not talented. Carson Beck ain't had 4th and 31.
That's true. I still want Beck, because he's going to make the clutch throw. And I just love how he force-fed Brock Bowers in the Auburn game. I know you, not to bring up a bad thing, but you know what I mean? Like,
dear Lord, man, I'm an Auburn fan. You can't bring up really an Auburn game without a bad beat. Have I mentioned the one time I went to the Swamp? It was 30 years ago. And
October 15th, 1994, and it was Bo Nix to Frank Sanders.
I didn't know if I'd mentioned it. I just was there. I just happened to be there.
Southeast corner of the end zone. And shout out to my boy, Dr. Michael Gilmore, who got beat on that play. He lives down
here. Well, he's doing better than both of you and me. We're in the media business. He's got MD. I went to college for 6 years. I just don't have any of the fancy initials after my name.
I went 6.5 years.
Okay. Well, yeah. I feel like Tommy Boy here, where David Spade goes, yeah, most people will call you doctor. What number did you call? Did I get a 9er in there? Did I get a 9er? So.
All right, so I'm going to go with Connor Wigman, 6. Now, obviously, he's coming off the injury, but eight career starts, 16 touchdown passes, only 2 interceptions.
Too high. Too high.
Maybe.
That's too high.
I'm going to go Brady.
The tier thing I would take is now I'd take Brady Cook ahead of him.
Okay.
And on limited sample size, we both take Nico ahead of him. I would take Vandergriff ahead of him. And, I mean, if you look up, are you trading Jackson Arnold for him?
For Wigman?
Yeah.
No, I want Wigman ahead of Jackson Arnold.
Okay. I mean, there are a whole lot of star-studded dudes who we just don't know. And I know Wigman had a bigger sample size than some of these guys, but I don't know. Nussmeier, you taking where you got Nussmeier? So you got Wigman 6. Who you got 7?
Okay, so I've got Wigman 6, I got Brady Cook 7, and I got Graham Mertz 8, and I think that should be the tier 2. Who else do you want to throw in tier 2? Vandegrift?
Yeah, I think and that is more projection than resume. Which
he's got a gun.
Oh my word, dude! I mean, he checks every box, every single box that you look at.
And he's got good receivers this year too. Dane Key.
Yes, he does.
They're going to be good.
Yes, he does. So, I mean, I don't know. I think Wigman deserves a spot in tier 2, but I don't think he's the lead dog in tier 2. I mean, I don't know.
No, I hear you. I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of separation in my mind. But you're not as high on Wigman. I get it. Brady Cook was a baller last year. You know what? Yeah, I probably should have Brady Cook ahead of Wigman.
Well, and then you look at tier 3, and you know what's funny in this conversation is a top of tier 3 of the unproven but guys with huge upside. Texas's backup is probably a top tier 3, and that's young Arch Manning.
And DJ Lagway, maybe.
I mean, you look at a couple of guys who are standing there waiting for an opportunity, and they could certainly be. Hey, I'd trade Peyton Thorne right now for Arch Manning
and Lagway.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. All right, so I went Vandegrift 9, and then I'm going to go Taylon Green. And I'll talk more about him when we do Arkansas. So I'll be coming back to him. But I like his ability to, because not only can he run, he's got breakaway speed running the ball. All right. And then my guy, Diego Pavia. If you've never seen him play, this guy is a baller. 23 starts at New Mexico State. The last 2 years, 4,423 passing yards, 39 to 15 TDI and T ratio, and 1,433 yards rushing and a 5.3 yards per carry average. Dual threat, 1-0 at Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, he's had the best performance. I mean, if you're going to put chips on the table between he and Peyton Thorne, and you ask which one of the two has had the best performance at Jordan-Hare, it's Diego Pavia.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't really close.
Right.
I think Diego Pavia is certainly somebody, if you do the checklist of who you would trade for, he's 100% that guy. But I don't even know if he's going to get to finish the season, man.
Oh, I know.
Vandy's going to be bad.
Yeah, he's in
I mean, that's a tough road to hoe. But I don't disagree with you on guys that you start looking at. Would I rather have my guy or that guy? As an Auburn graduate, I'd rather have Pavia.
Yeah.
A couple of names. I think you're underselling Jackson Arnold, because
maybe I am.
I think Oklahoma is going. I'm not saying they're going to jump into the SEC like Texas is going to, and make a threat towards Atlanta. But I do think defensively they're going to be good, and I think this kid can play. So, and I'm trying to think who else. This group 4, I love your pick of Taylor Green, and we'll talk more about him. But I completely agree. We also, I think Nussmeier deserves a spot in this group too.
I'm not against that. I mean, I like Nussmeier.
And we know that the way the last decade of college football has gone, he's probably throwing to a future NFL first-round wide receiver at some point. So,
Yeah.
But no, I think you've got them in a pretty good order. I mean, I'm higher on Milroe than you are, but if you had Nussmeier right there, and I think Jackson Arnold probably deserves that conversation, and then that gets us down to
12.
The last couple 3.
So I had Nuss 12, Blake Shapen, the Baylor transfer, is going to Mississippi State at 13. Shapen has 23 career starts, 5,574 passing yards, 64% completion percentage, 36-13 TDINT ratio. And then I went with Jackson Arnold, and then Peyton Thorne, and then Lenoris Sellers to wrap it up at South Carolina, who I really haven't seen play because he hasn't really played.
And I mean, we don't even know if South Carolina settled on this. So
right, that is true.
I mean, it could be. I mean, heck, it could be Robbie Ashford, as far as we know. And either way, they're both 16. I agree with Peyton Thorne is 15th. He'll have a much better group of wide receivers this year.
Yes.
Which hopefully he makes the most of, coming from the words of an Auburn graduate. But I don't see how you can have – I would take Blake Shapen before I would take Peyton Thorne.
Yep. All right. On to the Razorbacks. And let me give out the Bet Online menu to win the CFP 250-1. To make the CFP, they were not on the board. To win the SEC 150-1. Season win total 4.5. Shaded to the over -120. The under is -110. Recruiting class number 28 overall, according to the 247 Sports Composite. In terms of transfer specific aspect of the class, number 26 nationally. They have 40 commits, 10 are 4 stars. They have 37 returning lettermen, 34 lost from a team that went 4-8 straight up and 5-7 against the spread. 9 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. They have their top 8 pass catchers back. And all right, Arkansas in the portal, 22 transfers, 2 or 4 stars, one being Xavier Sori, transfer from Georgia, linebacker, who needed more playing time. And they got 2 offensive they lost most of the O-line, but 2 offensive tackles out of the portal. Keyshawn Blackstock from Michigan State, Fernando Carmona from San Jose State, who started 24 games for the Spartans in the last 2 years. Nothing appeals to me in terms of the long shot odds for Arkansas. I assume that's the case for you, and we'll talk the win total when we go through the schedule.
I'm a little puzzled, just like we talked a little bit about with South Carolina last week. There should be an extra 0 on those numbers. I mean, Arkansas, if their win total's 4.5, shouldn't it be a 1,500-1 to win the SEC rather than 150-1, or 2,500-1 to win the college football national championship? I mean, dear Lord, their number's not even on the board to make the playoff. And I get if you do this long enough, you look at odds and point spreads in a little bit different light. these are not what Vegas expects. These are numbers that Vegas uses to get the most even money action on each side. So that I understand, but you got to be like Jerry Jones, an Arkansas devotee, and with enough money just light your cigars with $100 bills to bet either one of those things. Because what would Vegas set the odds on the other end of the spectrum? All right. Arkansas to not win the SEC championship.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be Tyson Buster Douglas or smaller.
Right.
I mean, you have to bet $10,000 to win 100.
Yeah. No, you bring up good points. Arkansas is not winning any championships this year. Sam Pittman's goal is a bowl game and to be retained for another year.
Pittman's goal is to go back to SEC Media Days next year. Period.
Right. End of story. Yes. All right. Let's talk about Taylen Green, or I'll give you some stats. So 2022 at Boise State, 271 passing attempts, 61.3 completion percentage, 2,042 passing yards, 14-6 TDI&T ratio. He's made 22 starts at Boise State the last 2 years. That 2022 season, 588 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, 7.3 yards per carry. So last year, 57.1% completion percentage, 1,752 yards, 11-9 TD/INT ratio, which is not that great, but 436 rushing yards, 5.6 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. This guy can run the read option. I'm not like comparing him to Lamar Jackson or anything, but we've got Bobby Petrino running this offense now. And so Bobby's got him a guy who can take that read option. And if he gets a big crease, he can go for big yardage. And if he has got the right or the corner takes or the safety or corner has a bad angle, he could be gone. He can take it through 70, 80-yard runs. That is in his repertoire. So, yeah, Taylen Green, I think he's going to be pretty good.
I do too. And a couple things that I'm going to start with Taylen Green. A lot of people don't realize how big he is. He's 6'6". He's
223,
230 in that range. I'm not saying he's Cam Newton big, but he's a big dude who is faster than you expect, but he's also going to be an option, pardon the pun, in that opportunity where it's 3rd and 2 and he keeps it and goes at right guard, which is not something. I mean, Lamar was he was the unicorn. So what Lamar Jackson was, that's a quarterback with 4.3 speed. But this guy, not that fast, but fast enough, also brings Cam-ish size to him. But you mentioned the name that is the biggest addition amid all the transfers, amidst all the recruits, even despite losing KJ Jefferson. The biggest headline for Arkansas was adding Bobby Petrino. And this, do I want him coaching my team? No. Do I want him babysitting my kids? Hell no. But do I want him calling plays in a live game situation? That dude would light you up in Madden. That guy calls plays like nobody I've ever seen. The two guys I've always said who call the best in-game plays, Bobby Petrino,
Steve Spurrier,
Paul Johnson.
Hey,
Spurrier had the handful of plays he was going to run. Spurrier's philosophy was great. Spurrier would go make certain he had 4 wide receivers that were better than your 4 corners. And whatever corner you put on Jacquez Green or Riddell Anthony or any of those dudes, he would pick that scab till you bled to death. And that is a great philosophy. But I've watched Petrino and Paul Johnson time and time and time again adjust in game to a place that their play calling is extraordinary, is what it is.
I'm a huge fan of Paul Johnson. I've always been a huge fan of Paul Johnson.
Honestly, with this dude and an off season to work with and motivation like he's rarely seen, because this is probably his last gasp. I mean, Petrino has burnt a whole hell of a lot of bridges, and nobody in the NFL wants to hire him after what he did with the Falcons. The conversations about ever being the one again, I don't know if that's going to be a thing.
Well,
But
no. Well, but hold time out. This is his best path to that. Pittman getting fired after losing at home to Ole Miss, and Petrino becoming the interim and beating the
pulling an Orgeron,
absolutely. That's why he took this
potentially.
job. That's why he took this job.
But he's also, if they lose to Ole Miss, they need to lose 56-49 because,
sure.
I mean, this guy's got to be in the lab right now cooking some stuff up. I mean, he's Walter White, and Jesse's knocking on the door going, "Hey, Mr. White, what are we cooking today?" I mean, this guy's got to be Breaking Bad right now.
Okay, and let's circle back to that when we go through the schedule, because or I can say it now. I'm just saying, like, if the offense is going good, but they're taking L's and they make the decision to fire Pittman, let's just say, is it a given Petrino becomes the interim head coach? I mean, that's a given, right? I
would think so.
If the offense
he's clearly, without knowing the inner workings in Fayetteville, that hire had to be forced on Pittman, right?
I think he was okay to it. I think he thought, well, if I'm going to be retained, Bobby's probably one of my best paths to being retained. And if I'm not retained, I don't give a mess who becomes interim.
Careful now, careful! You're about to go Andrew Dice Clay on me,
right?
I saw that. You just did Ralphie from Christmas Story with a fudge.
Right. This is true. All right. So let's see. A couple other just personnel notes I wanted to hit on. So the offense averaged 26.6 points per game last year. Dan Enos did criminal work with KJ Jefferson.
Yes,
we both think he has a big bounce back year. And if any of you all see a prop for KJ Jefferson's season rushing yards, please let us know at UCF. All right, so defensively, they gave up 27.9 points per game. They bring back 8 starters on defense, 9 on offense. So Phil Steele's national unit rankings have Arkansas number 48 at running back, number 42 at receiver, number 64 on the O-line, 36 on the D-line, 69 at linebacker, 35 at DB, 46 on special teams. Did they not have them at quarterback, or did I gloss over that? One moment here. No, I don't think they had them listed at quarterback, which Taylon Green could make Phil Steele and his staff regret that one. So on Phil Steele's preseason All SEC, not a lot of Razorbacks, but second team punt returner Isaiah Satania he is second team. Last year he averaged 12 yards per punt return, 1 touchdown. Also second team is defensive end Landon Jackson, who had 44 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks last season. And third team is Josh Braun, the former Gator at offensive guard. And then fourth team is Andrew Armstrong, the wide receiver, 56 catches, 764 yards, 5 touchdowns. One last player I want to mention, because if he's healthy, he had a season-ending injury last year, but he was really starting to come on as a true freshman, and that is Luke Haas. The 2 games before he got injured at LSU, which was a 34-31 barn burner, he had 6 catches, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. A week before that against BYU, he had 4 catches, 78 yards, 1 touchdown. He goes out with a season-ending injury the next week. But Luke Haas is an absolute stud. He was the gem of their recruiting class last year. All right. Anything else before we jump into the schedule?
All right, you mentioned Luke Haas, and I just think this is cool. The tight ends who wear like single digits, same with defensive ends
Right.
or defensive linemen. I just think that looks cool.
Me too.
I mean, Luke Haas wears number 9, and seeing one of those big dudes running down the middle of the field with a single digit, you're going, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. For sure. I agree. All right, let's get on the schedule, man. A W at Arkansas Pine Bluff at home on a Thursday, and an L at Oklahoma State. I presume we're on the same page.
We are.
All right. UAB at home, sneaky game, but I'm going to give Arkansas the win. You going to call for an outright upset here?
No, I'm not. It is a sneaky game. UAB's built a pretty good program, but I think the desperation that Pittman and the inspiration from Petrino is not going to allow them, at least in the first month or so. I mean, if the wheels fall off at the halfway point, who can predict? But again, who can predict? But I think this is a game, especially if they're coming off a loss in Stillwater, I think they'll be motivated to handle their business. And they're better. I mean, I think UAB's sneaky good, but I think I think Arkansas will be ready.
Yep. That will make them 2-1. I think they lose at Auburn.
I do too.
Makes them 2-2. Never know in Arlington. Usually a really close game, but I got to go A&M in that one.
I do too.
And Arkansas is in a terrible spot, albeit at home against Tennessee. It is Arkansas's 6th game in 6 weeks. They're off a rivalry game with A&M and Tennessee, and Nico have 2 weeks to prepare. With all those reasons in mind, I've got the Vols there.
Oh, I do too. And if you can find a game of the year line on this, whatever it is in July is going to be lower if you like Tennessee than what it will be come early October. It's hard to put fingers on telling people where to place their money on games that are still weeks, if not months out. But for what you just described, considering Arkansas not only is playing 6 games in 6 weeks, they're off back-to-back trips. They go from Fayetteville to Auburn, then they go from Fayetteville to Arlington at a quote-unquote neutral site, go back home, and then welcome a Tennessee team with 2 weeks to prepare. That one's going to get nasty.
I was not like texting or fiddling on my phone. I was going to Circa's app because I'm pretty sure there's no Tennessee Arkansas game of the year line, but they have some games that aren't on like DraftKings and FanDuel, but they do not have Tennessee Arkansas.
I mean, you agree with that reasoning, right? I mean, in this far out, but that's an impossible speed bump. That screams like what happened last year when Auburn dropped like, what they dropped, like 48-10?
48-10.
In Arkansas? Yikes.
And Auburn
Missouri wore them out at home too. I mean, we talk about Pittman's goal being to return. Pittman's goal, first and foremost, needs to be defend the home field. Because disappointing results are one thing for all of SEC fans. But even the casual SEC fan who spends his hard-earned dollars tailgating and buying tickets for his kids, and next thing you know, it's a T-shirt, and it's a hoodie, and it's 4 Cokes, and a hot dog, and you look up and you spend hundreds of dollars, and Missouri beats you 48-10 at home, that leaves a brutal taste in people's mouths.
Yeah, Pittman's only 16-10 at home, 4-3 the last 2 years. But I mean, like a win against Missouri State, a win against Kent State, a win against Western Carolina, a win against FIU. That's not what they're looking for. Okay, all right. So now we talked about it not being a great spot or being a much more ideal spot for Tennessee. Now this spot is ideal for Arkansas, and the last 4 meetings in the Arkansas LSU rivalry have each been decided by 3 points. And KJ did not play in the game in Fayetteville 2 years ago. It was a 13-10 game, and Arkansas would have won that game if KJ was playing. But so Arkansas gets 2 weeks to prepare for LSU. We agree that they're going to be 2-4. They're going to be in complete desperation mode, whereas LSU is going to be coming off of a home game against Ole Miss and with a trip to College Station on deck. So a kind of a sandwich spot for flat sandwich, whatever you want to call it. I say that all that to say this. I got it marked as a swing game. I think Arkansas can win that. I'm undecided at the moment. What do you think?
Well, I think I would bet on Arkansas and take the points because they're going to be if we're right, they're 2-4 at that point. I'll take Arkansas on the points, but I don't think they win, even as desperate as they are. And this could be the hot button Pittman game.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll just mention it will be Nussmeier's only second career road start, for what that's worth, if anything. Yeah, I'm gonna give LSU the win there too. But that's, again, if Arkansas is catching double digits or more than 7, well, depending on how they're playing, but that's a good situation for them. All right, the next week at Mississippi State. I got that marked as a swing game too, but I think I'm going to give it to Arkansas.
Yeah, it's a complete coin flip game, and one of the things that is really difficult is we know who Mississippi State's head coach is going to be on October 26th. I don't sit here confidently saying I know Sam Pittman's going to be the coach on that same Saturday in late October.
You think they would make? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, so if it's kind of what we talked about in more than one conversation as we're breaking down this game by game, if the wheels fall off, these guys with the portal option, with the draft options, with all of these things, I would pick Arkansas looking at the schedule sitting here today. But if they go into this game 2-5 and they've already handled Pittman, I mean, in Starkville is not an easy place to play. I mean, Although I will say this game screams Jefferson Pilot for people your age and mine, right?
Yes, no doubt.
This is such a nooner and such a woke crowd. I just need Dave Neal and Dave, the other guy, to be doing play-by-play with graphics that are like an hour and a half old and a glass of whatever your favorite beverage is as you get up in an Auburn dorm room before you have lunch. And God bless America. Arkansas, Mississippi State screams Jefferson Pilot.
Absolutely. I concur. They host Ole Miss the next week, and that's a loss. Then they get 2 weeks to prepare for Texas. Will Bobby Petrino be running the show at this point?
He very well may be, but they could have 2 years to prepare for this Texas roster, and it's still a loss.
And I don't know how many guys are left in Texas's locker room from 2021, but they went to Fayetteville and they got their ass kicked 40-21 by the Razorbacks. So a little revenge for Texas. That game that was the biggest win of Pittman's tenure, I think we can say, right?
Oh, I think that's 100% true. And with kickoff already set, is that game in Fayetteville or Little Rock?
Oh, it doesn't look like they don't play in Little Rock this year, I don't think. Okay. Or at least according to Phil Steele's mag, because he always says Little Rock if that's the case. Yeah, I don't think they're going to beat Texas, but it's not going to be a layup for Texas. Arkansas hates Texas. I think they'll beat
Arkansas
La
hates
Tech.
everybody. It's because they're Arkansas.
I think they'll beat La Tech, and
Yep,
they'll lose at Missouri.
I
So
agree.
so I gave them a win at Mississippi State. So that's 1, 2. So I got them with 4 wins. So that's an under, but I'm not going to bet on it because, they could maybe.
LSU is a possible swing game. You never know when Gundy's going to Gundy, even at home. I completely agree with you. If forced to bet a mortgage payment on this, I'm going under 4.5. But we've covered a handful of teams that I like South Carolina under 5.5 way more than I like Arkansas under 4.5.
Agreed. Agreed. So we both got the Razorbacks going 4-8. Probably going to be looking for a new coach unless Petrino gets the interim tag and upsets Texas and gets
Yeah,
retained.
you upset Texas. They're probably going to name you the permanent head coach. He can show up in that neck brace with all his face abrasions and be the rock lobster that he was after his volleyball excursion.
Yes.
And you beat Texas, nobody cares. Jerry Jones doesn't care because now he lives in Texas and he can tell all of his Texas buddies, hey, you know what? Yeah, we won again. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will say this. I like me some Sam Pittman. I hope they go over 4.5. And I hope he gets to a bowl game and he is retained because I thought things were going really well in his tenure until last season. They were way more competitive in that 2020 season. I mean, that was a very respectable 3-7. I mean, they had the lead on Georgia at halftime in that game, and they got cheated at Auburn. You remember? Yeah, we don't talk about that game, do we? Right? And had a competitive game with A&M. Lost a 3-point game to LSU. Lost a 2-point game to Missouri on a walk-off field goal. I remember that one. So that was I thought they overachieved. I know 3-7 doesn't sound like it, but they could have won a lot more of those games. And then 9-4 was awesome in 21. You go to a bowl game in 22. You have that thrilling. I forget how many overtimes that Kansas game went to. That was probably the funnest bowl game of that season. But then last year the wheels fell off and they go 4-8. So,
but I mean, and I like Pittman too. I've spoken to him a handful of times. He is way more honest than most college football coaches are. He is way more conversational than most college football head coaches are, and I admire both of those things. He's on the hot seat now because of the borderline criminal misuse of KJ Jefferson last year.
Yes.
I mean, KJ, hey, if we go back to earlier part of the show, if KJ Jefferson had stayed, he's in my top 5 rankings. He knocks Nico out.
Yes.
He is a bona fide dude.
Yes.
And they completely misused that kid.
And then, of course, they got him going at the Swamp.
And with Gus Malzahn saying he's the best athlete at that position I've had since Cam. And you don't think Gus Malzahn's been in the lab? Because the shine's off Gus Malzahn too. And, I mean, we talked about Petrino staring into the wishing well of your career destiny. Malzahn with KJ Jefferson, not only the rushing total, Malzahn in that combo, I have not looked at the roster, but I will. That's an interesting. Would you rather bet on UCF or Arkansas to make college football playoff?
UCF.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Not
and
even
you
close.
probably don't get every bit the 150 odds or whatever it was.
Yeah, UCF's going to be pretty good this year. And Malzahn's recruiting pretty good. And, yeah, I'm just looking at 8 starters back on D, 7 on offense. Phil Steele's national unit rankings are pretty high on UCF. all in all. So we'll see. Okay. 0-2, unfortunately, on the UFC last week. Taking this week off, light card, but we're back next week. UFC 304 is going to be fire next weekend. So I don't have anything else. Tell them about Jay's plays in the 5 at 10.
Jay's plays is riding the roller coaster of the summer, doing the best we can. We hit the over last night in the All-Star game. We hit the over, or 2 nights ago in the All-Star game, we hit the over last night with Caitlin Clark because it's such a desert in this sports betting week that yes, I'm making WNBA picks.
I was at a restaurant sitting at the bar watching. She was playing great. I mean, I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched probably a quarter, and wow, she was.
I know we watch her. My daughter is a middle school basketball player, and I've coached a bunch. I used to play, but no, we every time we get together and she's on TV, we watch her, and the transformation and her acclimation is staggering. She leads the NBA. She leads the WNBA in assists. She's the only player in the league that is in the top 20 in scoring, rebounding, and assists. She leads Miss Diana Taurasi, who was her biggest critic on draft night and in the NCAA Final Four in all 3 of those categories. I mean, it's staggering to me that A, she's not on the Olympic team, and B, she's not even in the 3-point shooting contest at the WNBA All-Star Weekend. And to which begs the question, as a lover of women's basketball, a guy who's coached it, a guy whose daughter plays it and enjoys it, what are you doing to grow the game if you're going to exclude Caitlin Clark?
Morons. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, you can read these types of rants and more at the 5 at 10 at timesfreepress.com. You have to subscribe to be able to get that entry, but you can get Jay's plays for free. Hopefully, if you have been enjoying Jay's plays, you've been going against me because I went from Memorial Day like plus 96 units. Even with last night's wins, we're at plus 83 units. So we've just been
still doing pretty damn good.
Yeah, but the roller coaster it's like that first hill you hit at Six Flags on the Scream Machine, and then
if you're above 50 units in a more than 2-year time, you got no apologies to make to anybody. Next week, we will do Mississippi State, and the following week, we will do Vanderbilt. He's Jay Greeson. I'm Brian Edwards. This is Southeastern 16. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you next week. We're out.